Edwin Schlossberg. Raising animals so people will have daily protein intake doesn't make sense. Think of all the land that's necessary for pasture. Solution of world food problem will involve sources of protein that stay in position, terrarium-like places, fuller domes, self-supporting, weather-controlled environments, organic reproduction of plant foods. Education and ecstasy, George Leonard. It would be better to have no school at all than the schools we now have. Encouraged, instead of frightened, children could learn several languages before reaching age of 4. At that age, engaging in the invention of their own languages. Play'd be play, instead of being as now, release of repressed anger. On the plane, I sat next to a psychologist employed at the Galesburg Mental Hospital. I said I was glad students had succeeded in changing the institution. He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I understand patients leave the hospital and enter enliveningly into community life." He said, "That isn't true." Use the same opening until you know all its pitfalls. Walking toward Greenwich and Bank Streets, I noticed an open manhole with temporary tool shed. Con Edison at work. 2 tall, heavy-set workmen facing one another in the shed were concentrating on something placed between them. It looked as though they were playing chess. I walked past, stopped, went back, came close to them. They were playing chess. She'd spent 2 weeks in southwest Colorado working on Solari's building that'll house 3,000 people. All apartments are cubes and identical. Those that are finished are used by the workers. If you think about it, she said, it's awful. But if you live in it, you find it's delightful. Mushrooms. Teaching machines. Therapy machines, aiding people to form their brain waves, shifting wave shape from that of anxiety to that of poise, invention. He said he'd rather have half a pint of the wild ones than a gallon of the tame, speaking of wild strawberries. Sam Moon, poet, met me at the Galesburg airport, asked him whether he'd heard of changes in the mental hospital brought about by students. He hadn't. Doris Moon told me hospital uses dope. Doped-up madmen, formerly given jobs as salesmen, seemed listless, not really interested in what they were doing. Their eyes were strange. Galesburg customers demanded doctors stop letting their patients out. Soil is as precious as pearls, and water as precious as oil. A slogan coined by the Valley of Stones Brigade of Yue Qichuang Commune. In 1959, we developed the program of splitting the mountain, creating the soil so as to alter its face into fertile land. Doesn't matter whether you're in first class or coach, you see the same movie. Many people are allergic to the commercial mushroom. Donald M. Simons tells of an acquaintance who suffers vomiting, diarrhea, and loss of consciousness from eating any restaurant sauce that has even a trace of a mushroom in it. Moved to the country for city reasons, to start summer theater, to set up electronic music studio. Instead, took to walking in the woods. Just after 10 o'clock, I cashed a check for $100. At noon, I lost my billfold. I spent the afternoon canceling credit cards. I also called the police. I tried to remember what there was in my wallet besides passport, bank book, vaccination certificate, and Social Security card. At 5 o'clock, I began drinking. I was invited to speak to staff members of a Connecticut asylum. After leaving the reception room, I walked down the hall among the madmen toward the room where I was to speak. When I got there, I knew what had to be said. "You're sitting," I told the doctors, "on top of a gold mine. Share your wealth with the rest of us." Left college, end of sophomore year. Refused honorary degrees. Reinforcement, positive or negative, is beside the point. I'd been smoking like a furnace for nearly a week. As I was leaving, university secretary said, "You've given us a breath of fresh air." Mao, our point of departure is to serve the people wholeheartedly, to proceed in all cases from the interests of the people and not from one's self-interest or from the interests of a small group. Subjected university library to chance operations. 80 students read 400 books. Class became people, conversation. At 9 o'clock in the evening, the phone rang. Man's voice. "Did you lose anything today?" "I lost my billfold." "How much did you have in it?" "Around $100. "Exactly 98. "Where can we meet?" "Tomorrow morning at 10:15 at your bank." "Which bank?" "You know which bank. If someone there can identify you, I'll give you back your billfold." I went to sleep. Use what you have, no garbage. Beet tops with yogurt. Galesburg, people still applauding our performance. Man beside himself with anger rushed up. Shouting, he accused our company of fraud, me of dishonoring Schoenberg's name. I spoke. He became more furious. I was silent, but disturbed. Badness I'd hoped for, I didn't know how to enjoy. Future made clear. I got to the bank early. The manager said he'd identify me. Sam Moon gave me student proposal for changes in Galesburg Hospital. He said, "It's not what you have in mind. It's a Skinnerian nightmare." Teenager imagines that by spending time in a building marked music, he'll become a musician. Even books on the subject are apt to be confusing. I didn't learn anything to speak of about mushrooms until I met Guy Nearing. Mao, everyone knows that in doing a thing, if one does not understand its circumstances, its characteristics, and its relations to other things, then one cannot know how to do it and cannot do it well. If I can't take what happens, I'm not ready for anything. Deinstitutionalization. Opium dens in China no longer exist. How did Chinese shake the habit? Marcel Duchamp gave me a copy of his book on king and pawn endings. I asked him to write something in it. He wrote in French, "Dear John, look out, yet another poisonous mushroom. Marcel." Horicon Marsh, Wisconsin, October 71. 100,000 Canadian geese. Highway 49 bisects Marsh's northern section. Bird watchers park along the road, get out and use binoculars. Traffic, including trucks, continues, but geese seem undisturbed. Helicopter passing over alarmed them as they flew up from pools and fields. Sky turned black. Traffic and helicopter were no longer to be heard. Goose sounds. Edwin Schlossberg, gather information without bias, define problems, include their ramifications, find solutions using energy sources going with nature, not against nature, sun, wind, tides, not fossil fuels. Initiate action alone and with others without waiting to be told what to do. I waited. 10:15, 10:30, 10:45. I asked the bank manager whether the branch office's address was on my bank book. He assured me that it was. Revolution in China, implemented in part by big character posters. People walking in the streets receive instructions. In industrialized West, people sit at home glued to the TV or drive around listening to car radios. Instead of commercials, broadcast suggestions for useful activity on the part of every man, woman, and child. Repeat every 15 minutes. Schlossberg, fear produces non-comprehensive design science. Commoners' proposal to send sewage to the land via pipeline system is an example. What's needed are toilets automatically productive of properly treated and packaged dry fertilizers. Motel included miserable Chinese restaurant. Restaurant had a liquor license. Down the road was the villa. Its wine was undrinkable. 17 inches of snow fell. Winds rose. Traffic outlawed. State of emergency. Villa closed. Only restaurant open was Chinese restaurant. Met in the bar. Got plastered. Went to dining room. Food was delicious. Poster in River Falls, Wisconsin. Ralph Nadar has called upon students to organize research groups to work in the public interest. corporate responsibility, environmental preservation, consumer protection, sex and race discrimination. They must mean sex and race liberation. Support WISPIRG, Wisconsin Public Interest Research Group, student-funded and controlled. Sign petition today. 10 to 11, a slight elderly man entered the bank. The lapels of his coat were faced with fur. We shook hands. The bank manager said, "It's good there are still people like you living." The man replied, "I believe in God. I think that doing as I do, people prove that God exists." Huge 747, practically empty. Boarding pass lacked seat assignment. Hostess dropped plan to send me back to the counter to get one. I'd said, "There's plenty of room, don't you think?" We're not concerned with the audience. We're concerned with people. In what does the old ideology of the exploiting classes lie? It lies essentially in self-interest, the natural soil for the growing of capitalism. That is why, in the course of revolution, Mao tells us, we must fight self. That's why the golden rule, do unto others as you would be done by, turned green in the USA. It took self-interest for granted. Devalue it. Student proposed change in Galesburg Asylum was isolation of patients, separation of mad from mad, 24-hour intensive supervision of each individual. Infirmities of old age. Now that we have everything we need, we discover that there is almost nothing that we have, that we want. Rush hour, no rush. Trucks, buses, cars, Sheridan Square, New York City, complete stop. 45 minutes. Now and then someone moved an inch or two. Details changed. Congestion continued. Black truck driver studied situation, found a solution, cheerfully gave directions. People clapped their hands, blew their horns. Early morning, yesterday, melting snow. Sound of footsteps. Night lights still on. Bank manager insisted that identifying me wasn't necessary. I was one of the bank's depositors. The man handed me my billfold and asked me to look through it carefully and notice that nothing had been removed. First, master the end game, then the middle, and finally the opening. Thus you will be able from the beginning to see through to the end. Mushrooms tested by feeding them to dog. After dinner, maid said, "Dog's dead." Guests and hosts had stomachs pumped. Dog had been run over by a car. D-School Society, Ivan D. Illich, Education Automation, R. Buckminster Fuller. Just as in Buddhism, denial of cause and effect arose from the realization that everything's caused by everything else. So Illich's society without school isn't different from Fuller's society with nothing but school. Illich and Fuller, all there is to do is live and learn. A little child shall lead them. Edwin Schlossberg's Brooklyn Children's Museum. Eddie insisted board of directors include children. When Schlossberg visited Fuller, Bucky said, "Listen carefully to the children's words. I want to know each word they say." County in Florida, law was passed prohibiting the sale of detergents. Housewives traveled to other counties to purchase their detergents. We know we're breaking the law, but we want to get our clothes white. While looking through my billfold, I said, "I want to share what's in it with you, $50. He didn't smile. My work's time-consuming. This has been a serious interruption. I gave him another 20. What do you do? I'm in rewrite. What's that? It's in connection with continuity. What's your name? So-and-so. Valda said that if you change your residence every 6 months, you can legally free your children from compulsory education. I asked Mr. So-and-so whether he had found my billfold in a taxi. He said, "I found it in the gutter." How old are you, dear moon? 13.7. You're still young, are you not? One comes, then another, and another. Who'll be held on your lap? America is the oldest country of the 20th century. It's made the most mistakes of the 20th century. Whole Earth. Industrialization is a self-regenerative evolutionary phenomenon which started in China at least 4,000 years ago. It traveled westward and has reached China again in vastly advanced effectiveness. R. Buckminster Fuller. Ihab Hassan's book, The Dismemberment of Orpheus, begins with a statement by Franz Kafka: "The decisive moment in human evolution is perpetual. That is why the revolutionary spiritual movements that declare all former things worthless are in the right, for nothing has yet happened." Whole Earth Cookbook. Our recipes are not complicated. We want to turn you on to the relaxation in simple, natural cooking. The country kitchen is a traditional gathering place. We at the Whole Earth Restaurant make a party out of preparing meals. We hope you'll do the same. Cadwallander and Orr. Mao. Destruction means criticism and repudiation. It means revolution. It involves reasoning things out, which is construction. Put destruction first, and in the process, you have construction. I complimented Mr. So-and-so on the tie he was wearing. It was silk, dark red, straight and narrow. It was pinned against a pink and white striped shirt. He said, "It's a relic of a previous age." As we left the bank, there was Meg Harper, one of the Cunningham dancers. I introduced her to Mr. So-and-so and told him that the Cunningham Company was about to open in Brooklyn. I offered to arrange for him to have tickets. Mr. So-and-so said, "Thank you, but I don't want any reward." All night long, thoughts of nirvana and samsara. How exhausting. Apparently I was caught by the Buddha. Sengai. Mushrooms I found in one day were more than enough for a year. Reduce use of combustion engines. Jim and Carolyn went to Skyscraper Indian Restaurant. Restaurant had no other customers. Food and view were good. Afterward, back home, Jim noticed he didn't have his wallet. Suzuki die sets. One has not understood Zen until one has forgotten it. We got rid of the wolves. Now there are too many deer. Forest rangers' proposal to reintroduce wolves was stymied by protests from profit-seeking sheep ranchers. The shepherd is a wolf in man's clothing. I haven't been to a movie for 3 months of Sundays. I gather from what Carolyn reports that Hollywood now produces false entertainment, unmitigated violence on the screen, snickering, laughter in the audience. Jim telephoned the restaurant. "Do you have my wallet?" "Yes." "Do you have our seat cover?" "I don't know anything about your seat cover. I just want my wallet back. We've lost too many seat covers, and recently also a vase. If you'll bring us back our seat cover, we'll gladly return your wallet." Throughways promote the automobile industry. People without high-speed cars can't use them. Their false utility, illage. Variation, multiplying cans and bottles provides false convenience. Let each household keep its containers, taking them empty to appropriate stores to be filled. This will bring about refreshing changes in supermarket design. Staying at home will become as amusing as vacationing in a village in Spain. Needed new glasses. Doctor, noticing hemorrhages in my eyes, said, "Do you have diabetes?" "Don't know." Disturbed, looked up diabetes in dictionary, decided I wasn't overly hungry, thirsty, didn't excessively urinate. Complete examination showed no diabetes. Eye doctor said, "Well, you're just getting old. There's nothing I can do about it. I want to see you every 2 or 3 months." Bantam paperback anthology of the writings of Mao Zedong, edited by Anne Fremantle, is dedicated to Dr. Ivan D. Illich. 12 disciples one teacher, one too many. Best things in life are free. American industry thinks we can't afford them. If we could change our language, that's to say the way we think, we'd probably be able to swing the revolution. On his way to the restaurant, Jim decided that if they refused to give him his wallet, he'd get a policeman to help him. We must find something else to do than art. We are going to China. We hope our visit will leave no traces. Called Statistics Section, Immigration Division, Canadian government, asked how many Americans had recently become Canadian citizens. They said that takes 5 years. However, in 1967, 19,038 Americans immigrated to Canada. In 1968, 20,422. In 1969, 22,785. In 1970, 24,424. USA has apparently taken steps to solve the population problem, but only from its own point of view. Jack Collins, brilliant mind, spastic paraplegic, Bobby Fischer's teacher. No one in the world of chess is as beloved. Frequently laughing, he gets around the apartment by riding small tricycle. People who don't play complain chess takes too much time. Given the opportunity to study with Collins, it'd be a waste of time not to. Cherish and reuse plastic utensils and containers. Don't throw them away. Don't acquire more than you need. Don't take them with you. Leave them for the next person to use. Distinguish as you would in the case of mushrooms between those that are poisonous and those that aren't. Do not use plastics that are derived from fossil fuels. Midst of these thoughts, Jim felt unusual warmth on his back. Reaching under his coat, he found the seat cover stuck to his jacket. Receiving his wallet, his apologies were politely interrupted. Don't apologize. This happens all the time. Alternatives to art. Crossing bridge from Windsor, Canada, to Detroit, Michigan, the bus driver announced, "We're now entering no man's land." A newspaper man wrote asking me to send him my philosophy in a nutshell. Get out of whatever cage you happen to be in. If you're a dope addict in Detroit and happen to be hospitalized for some reason, no problem. Someone pays you a visit, brings you a fix, and on the way out, rips what he can from other patients. Irritation in my left eye was diagnosed by 2 doctors as chalazion. Is that a sty? No, it's chalazion. Will it go away by itself? No, it has to be scraped out. Sue Weil made an appointment for me in Minneapolis 4 days thence, which I kept even though my eye no longer bothered me. The doctor's office was a museum of modern art, plus many patients and many nurses. One cheerful nurse gave me a preliminary examination. National wildlife refuges, museumization of wilderness, controlled folly. Doctor said, "Your eyes are healthy. Nothing needs to be done." What about the hemorrhages? They're not significant. The sty will go away in 6 or 8 months. What about the chalazion? Chalazion's a synonym for sty. Choose among all the masters the master whose way of playing appeals to you the most. Then replay all of his games. Barbershop's like a community. Once you get in, you don't want to leave. It's for men, women, and children. There are potted plants, flowers, 2 large live tortoises, brightly colored robes to choose from, antenna enterprises. Cry in the wilderness. We're indebted to China for its language, the I Ching, Lao Tzu, Chuang-Tzu, Zen Buddhism too. Gunpowder we'll do without. Printing will be electronic. The Great Wall and roast pig, together with other meats, can go. Give us the Chinese sense of nature, the Chinese sense of society. As we were taking off from Detroit, asked the Chinaman sitting near me whether he thought acupuncture might be used to de-addict drug addicts. He said, "Works for arthritis and lung diseases. You think it works for drug addiction?" "Perhaps it does," he said. Imitation of nature in her manner of operation, traditionally the artist's function, is now what everyone has to do. Complicate your garden so it's surprising, like uncultivated land. Suburban policeman came to the door. He went away without making any arrests. If you're poor, it's illegal. If you're rich, you're automatically within the law. What necessary mystery can many people working together make? Effective revolution. Norman Brown. What we finally seek to do is to create an environment that works so well we can run wild in it. Fuller, I now ask cosmic questions. Is man needed in the universe? Does he have a universal function? If he is essential, what needs to be invented to improve his functioning? What are the largest overall trends of human evolution that need accommodations? Food. Infirmities of old age, old Japanese sayings, wrinkles on the face, dark spots grow on the skin, and the back bent, bald-headed and gray-bearded, the hands tremble, the legs totter, and gone are the teeth, hard of hearing, and eyesight bedimmed. Indispensable are a hood on the head, wrappers, a stick, and spectacles. Syntax, like government, can only be obeyed. It is therefore of no use except when you have something particular to command, such as go buy me a bunch of carrots. The mechanism of the I Ching, on the other hand, is a utility. Applied to letters and aggregates of letters, it brings about a language that can be enjoyed without being understood. Then a hot water bottle, heating stone, chamber pot, and a back scratcher. Meddlesome he is, afraid of dying, and lonesome, suspicious of others. The desire for possession grows stronger, repetitive, short-tempered, and querulous, obtrusive and officious. The same stories over and over again, in which his own children are invariably praised. Boastful of his health, he makes others feel tired beyond endurance. It is right to rebel. When I had a Jaguar, I noticed anyone else who drove a Jaguar. Now I'm wearing jeans instead of suits. I notice nearly everyone. Fuller and Mao transform mistakes into projects, misinformation into facts. Forget yourself. Blur the distinction between Fuller and Mao. Change the environment, and at the same time, change man. There is no line to be drawn between the two. Gautam told me Indian weavers used to work alone. To increase production, assembly line methods introduced at Ahmedabad. Workmen became unhappy. After systematic experiments, group cooperation without unhappiness was established. 5 people make smallest happy group. Less than 5 make trouble for one another. 12 make largest happy group. With 13, group spirit is lost. We have learned that from here on, it is success for all or for none. Unity is plural, and at minimum 2. You and I are inherently different and complementary. Together we average as 0, that is, as eternity. Buckminster Fuller. 2, 1 against 1. Mao Zedong. We must firmly believe that the great majority of the masses are good, and that bad elements only make up a very small fraction. 3 people are 2 against the other one. 4 people split into 2 couples, each couple intent on making trouble for the other couple. Old age of the USA. It can't see or hear very well. It's hard for it to walk. Its face is wrinkled. Its teeth are false. Black mother and son in the laundromat. She was born in Barbados. Went to Europe, married a doctor, became a trained nurse. Boy was born in Toronto. Jobs she takes are those permitting her son to accompany her. When washing machine I was using began dancing, she helped me hold it in place.